Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Good afternoon, or evening, or morning, whenever you're watching this show. And welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, where you are watching it or listening to it, or on KGRA's YouTube channel. Subscribe to KGRA and have full access to all of their thousands of shows on UFOs and the paranormal, or subscribe to KGRA's and receive a 30% discount on your monthly or weekly subscription if you use my name, Peter, as your subscription code. No monologue today. We'll go right into the show. My guest today is Dr. Robert Davis, an internationally recognized research scientist. After receiving his doctorate degree in 1981 from The Ohio State University, he served as a professor for the State University of New York for over 30 years. He has presented his scientific research on the effects of toxic stimuli on the brain and sensory systems on numerous national and international scientific conferences that include invited lectures at Harvard, Cambridge, and Beijing University. He has also published over 60 articles in scholarly journals and was awarded major grants from the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health and the National Institute of Health to fund his research. Since retiring in 2004, Bob has published 3 books: The UFO Phenomena, Should I Believe?, Life After Death, An Analysis of the Evidence, and his most recent book, Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality, and You. Bob has also written numerous book chapters and research articles on consciousness and the unexplained in the Journal of Consciousness Studies and the Journal of Scientific Exploration and Edge Science. He has been invited to lecture on these topics at national and international conferences and has appeared on numerous radio shows and a film documentary. With mainstream science having no clear answer to the concept of true reality, consciousness, and the unexplained, Bob decided to turn his book, Unforeseen Forces, into a documentary called The Consciousness Connection, with Emmy Award winner Dave Beatty of Dreamtime Entertainment. This film, which includes leading researchers from many disciplines, is designed to help bridge the gap between science, consciousness, and spirituality by integrating current experimental research and theories with life-changing personal accounts of extraordinary experiences reported by millions worldwide. Dr. Davis's books and planned documentary serve to integrate the physical world of science with the science of the subjective, to prove evidence to help answer humanity's most elusive question: what is consciousness and the true nature of reality? The film documentary's website, which includes a trailer, is consciousnessfilm.info. And Dr. Robert Davis, it is a pleasure to welcome you to Meanwhile Here on Earth, my friend.
Well, it's a sincere honor and privilege to be on your show, Peter. I'm a big fan of you and your work throughout the years, so thank you.
My pleasure. Let's get right to the beginning, Bob. Where were you born?
I was born in the South Bronx, about a mile from Yankee Stadium. So needless to say, I was a Yankee fan. That comes with the territory, and loved playing stickball. So,
tell me a little bit about your parents. And with that, I want to go to the first image that you sent us here. Great picture. What did your father do for a living?
My dad worked in the post office at the main postal office right by on Church Street, right by where the Twin Towers were located.
Yeah, I know that neighborhood well. This
And you had
photo
a
is
view.
you and your sister in the Bronx?
Yeah, my dear twin sister, and obviously our parents loved to dress us up in a similar fashion. And that was on University Avenue, overlooking Harlem River, and in the projects. And it was such a pleasure to have a sister that is so warm and loving, along with my parents. And to this day, my sister is a source of great love and strength.
Was your mom a stay-at-home mom, as was the tradition most of the time back then?
Most of the time, yes. And then she did assume some part-time work. But how they did it at that time, I don't know. Walking up 5 flights of stairs with a heavy groceries in the cart. It's different, but that was the way of life. A strong woman, and I miss her terribly as my dad.
Yeah, this was when the Bronx was a much more integrated series of neighborhoods before the great destruction in part of the Bronx by the master plan of Robert Moses, who cut roadways and freeways and highways through very stable neighborhoods and kind of laid the seeds of destruction in the name of modernity and, a very complex and controversial figure for sure, who left his mark, and in some ways in a very negative way, on the great state of New York.
Well, yeah, he in part that Cross Bronx Expressway that divided the Bronx in two it created major problems. It resulted eventually in an exodus of many people from the South Bronx to the North Bronx. So, Co-op City, as you may recall, which still exists in the northern area of the Bronx, serves as an exodus for many people who lived in the South Bronx who couldn't tolerate the crime, the drugs that were around at the time, and so for a period of time, living in Co-op City was very nice. In fact, David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, lived there, and I knew him not well. After we found out that one evening it was him behind it all, it was more than a jaw-dropping experience.
Oh my gosh!
But it was a wonderful time, all in all, living in the South Bronx and with Yankee Stadium in the background and beautiful people to play ball with, and that was a way of life.
Did you go to Yankee Stadium much as a kid?
Every chance I got. Every chance, yeah.
Huh.
You feel like the luckiest person in the world when you go to Yankee Stadium and you hear Mickey Mantle is 20 feet away from you in center field. You think there's no other place to be. You feel so fortunate. You forget about everything else and all the negative aspects of the Bronx. Bronx has a great deal to offer, however, and we like to think we're a little bit better than Brooklyn in some ways. In some ways, but,
the derivation of the origin of the name, the Bronx?
Named after Jonas Bronk. Who bought land in that area, and the county was named after him, Bronx.
Basically, yeah, it's that property is the Bronx, and they just changed it to an X, and the name stuck. This next image. Whew. Your dad.
Yeah, not a very clear image, and I apologize for that. But under the circumstances,
image, though.
Yeah, in World War II, you dig a ditch, and he's shooting his anti-artillery gun at planes overhead in the Philippines, and trauma galore, unfortunately, as most of our ancestors had in those days. He grew up in a Jewish community in the Ukraine. With bullets flying overhead. Why? They were Jewish. They had to escape to New York. Then you go through the Depression. Then you go through World War II. And I often look at that picture. I can't tell you how many times. So when things were tough for me, and by comparison, it was nothing. But I gained strength by comparing my problems throughout life, which, of course, never came close to his. But it taught me that we're products of our past, but we don't have to be prisoners of it. And that exists today for our wonderful service people who are still, unfortunately fighting and risking their lives.
As a boy in elementary school, did you have dreams of what you wanted to do or be as an adult?
Other than play shortstop for the Yankees? Is that what you No, but I always was resonated with science. I thought that would be in the picture for some reason, and that was reflected in the books I used to read. I grew up playing chess. I was very left-brained, so the first book I read was the 1963 World Almanac.
Oh my gosh.
Well, not word for word, but I needed the facts, Then the second book I read was the 1964 World Almanac. You want to hear what the third book was?
I'm getting a psychic flash here.
But I very left-brained, and that being said, why I don't know, but science was more analytic in nature than the arts, and so I did have some resonation towards that. Yeah.
By the time that you had mastered reading, and obviously it was by 1953, was your reading incorporating anything more in the way of novels or fantasy, or you pretty much stuck to science books as a kid?
Well, I was never really drawn to fiction. I always wanted to read about true stories, stories of survival, of people overcoming tragedy, like my dad. So I would often read, aside from, stories about Babe Ruth, of course, and sports figures. How can you not, growing up in the Bronx, I guess. I always leaned towards reading about World War II. Obviously, The Longest Stay by Cornelius Ryan, Cosmos by Sagan as I got older, books on the space race, The Right Stuff, Lost Moon, The Race to Space, those kinds of books that were factual in nature, and that was aligned with what my dad went through to some extent. It was overwhelming realizing what they went through. I can't believe it. You see, Saving Private Ryan, the movies about Patton and all those movies, it boggles my mind that people had to endure that, and they still do. And you're getting a little bit into another arena about the state of our planet, which is, but it existed, unfortunately, throughout the eons, and we just can't seem to escape it, unfortunately.
Did you grow up with a TV in the house?
With the antennas on top that you kept on moving about and kicking to get good reception, black and white. The rich people had a pseudo color TV, so at that time. But we had that.
You remember any of the shows that you enjoyed as a kid?
Oh, the Leave It to Beaver, the
story of my life.
Dennis the Menace, the typical kind of shows that were popular, like Twilight Zone. Maybe that inspired my interest in what we will be talking now about. But the usual shows, as well as the kid-related shows like Wonderama and things of that nature.
Yes. By the time you got to high school, were you pretty much set on looking toward a career in science? And if so, had you zoned in on an area of primary interest?
Not in high school. Not in high school. I was a good student, an underachiever, because playing ball took precedent. I really get turned on to the academics in college, but it was all about dating and having fun. But I did very well in science, not that well in English and social studies. But I excelled in the math and the sciences. So I didn't have a focus really on what to do with that, but then realized it later on through my education.
This next image, tell us a little about it.
Which one is that? That's the with my friends playing on Rockwood Street, huh? Every year for the past 7 years, we have a reunion on Rockwood Street in the Bronx.
Wow.
Where we played stickball and football, everything from morning to night. A block off the Grand Concourse. You grew up in Queens, but you may have heard of the Grand Concourse. So we meet up in October for the past 7 years, and you can imagine the attention we draw from people living in the deep South Bronx, watching these old guys running around, hitting a ball, and several of them come and join us playing. One time somebody brought a drone to video us playing stickball. It was a blast. And then afterwards, and it's surreal, running the same bases that you did when you're 8 years old, but now you're in your 60s. And then we often go to Arthur Avenue to finally have some decent pizza, which you can't find anywhere else. And it's better than Queens. Well, Flushing had good pizza.
I think for viewers and listeners who did not grow up in a heavy urban concentration, the game of stickball is foreign to you. It is traditionally played with the handle of a broom, or that kind of handle, and a tennis ball. And that was basically the combination of, baseball and softball that was practiced on the street, cars going by, whatever. So it's a very unique urban conjugation of the great American game there.
And I still have a Spalding in my room. If you have a few minutes, I'll get it and show everybody. Yeah, but they're quite more expensive now and don't bounce as well. But we broke a few windows in the past, and even more recently we busted it. But on Arthur Avenue, where we go have a nice meal, that's where they filmed The Bronx Tale. If you remember that scene when they have the bikers walking into the bar and they make that commotion, and then I forget his name, but he walks in and he says, "Now you can't leave," and then that was the Bronx. They owned it. Certain people did on certain streets, and they kept it their way. But it was rough in many different ways.
That film tells a particularly rough version of the story, and beautifully brought to the screen by the actor and writer Chaz Palminteri, who has a lead in it opposite De Niro, who plays a very subdued role in it. And sadly, the actor who stars in it, the young actor who also had terrific performing credits in The Sopranos some years later, basically got caught up in the world of drugs, was involved in the death of an individual, and is serving hard time right now.
Yeah, I understand that. In fact, there's a play was made based on that movie called The Bronx Tale, and it was played in Fort Myers, not that far from where my wife and I live. And I was going to share a photo of my wife standing next to the big poster of the film, The Bronx Tale, but thought it would be going a little overboard on that matter. But it was, it's as hard as it was in many ways. It childhood was beautiful.
Oh, sure.
For a lot of reasons, for all of us in the city. Until you leave, then you realize that, there's a lot better. But you still miss so many things that New York City can only provide. Major cities can.
This next photo that I brought up a bit early, tell us about this.
That's my wife and I at about the age of 15 at Orchard Beach, which is our haven, our getaway. And we considered each other brother and a sister. Nothing more than that. Just a deep personal bond.
Yeah.
It was love, appropriate at that age. But I gave her a record. He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother by the Hollies.
Sure.
And I remember to this day the ecstasy in her eyes when I gave it to her. And it's still our song. And I sort of knew at that time when I saw that reaction, that love in her eyes, that bond with someone who you know from childhood, that's a friend that develops into a love and a resulting family. There's nothing better than to have that common element where we grew up in the same environment. We understand each other in that respect. And commonalities exist as a result. But love was there and appropriate at that age. And I realize now, maybe more than ever, that she really does love me, because someone who loves you sees how moody you can be and how hard it is to handle at times, but she still wants you. And she's the best thing that ever happened to me. That's for sure.
How wonderful that you've had each other for all this time. I want to go back momentarily to a time before that, which, if you're of a certain age, is a galvanizing moment. Under President Kennedy, when the initial Mercury astronauts, the 7 astronauts that were going to pioneer this whole new area of science and space, were brought out as a total geek who was not into sports, although at that time, I guess I still was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. I will admit it here. That where the other boys were memorizing the backs of all the baseball cards and citing all the stats, I was learning everything I could about these 7 guys who were being presented to us with a huge PR campaign and a certain amount of, over-the-top idealism. Do you remember that time and thinking about, my gosh, we're going to go into space and this is incredibly exciting for a young person?
It was not only exciting, but every time, let's put it this way, it was exciting to the extent that every time we were scheduled to launch that morning to space, from Alan Shepard to Grissom to John Glenn, I felt so sick that I had to convince my mother that I couldn't go to school. I'm kidding, of course. Faking an illness to stay home to watch the launch. I had to watch the flight. More often than not, the launch was scrubbed, and I was disappointed for, lying to my mom that I didn't feel well and had to stay home, because then the next day they tried to launch. I didn't feel well that day either to stay home and watch it. But at that time too, the assassination of President Kennedy obviously impacted the whole nation in traumatic ways, and that too relates to maybe one of the first books I did read on my own, Profiles in Courage, and had such great respect for the hero that he was in the war and what he did in his career. The unfortunate things that happened cannot be emphasized enough.
At about this time where we're talking about, bracketed between, say, junior high school and being accepted to college or university, had you heard anything about or had any thoughts about this phenomena, originally usually referred to as flying saucers? In 1956, the more scientific term of UFO, or unidentified flying objects, being adopted. Do you remember anything that your first introduction to that concept, word, or subject?
Watching movies like Forbidden Planet, brought that to my attention. Twilight Zone, etc. To Serve Man. Remember that episode in Twilight Zone? That sparked something, and I think in all of us in varying ways. But we remember the blackout in New York City. I think it was in 1965.
Very well.
I recall reading an article after that about UFOs being spotted. Was it over Niagara Falls? Did you hear that too?
Well, not only did I hear it, but one of my first mentors in the world of UFO studies died much too early. A New York City police detective named Pete Mazzola, who was also a crack UFO investigator, personally told me that he had friends who were state troopers who were part of the security around the Indian Point nuclear plant, upstate New York,
right,
who observed UFOs over the nuclear plant at the time of the blackout. And I had the unique experience of being in a car heading east on 95, away from New York City, when my friend and I, something happened. And what it was in the rear view mirror, which I was catching an angle of, things changed. And I turned around and the city was gone. The city was gone. Of course, right before that, it had been, a myriad of lights. So I remember it very well and very dramatically.
And there was some link, whether or not they caused it. That's the subject of some controversy, but it was an issue that they were seeing over the major electric plants at the preceding the blackout. Along those lines, you remember in the mid-70s, there was another major blackout in New York City, 76, 77. I was up in New Rochelle with a friend of mine, and we each had a girl in the car, and then you could see the skyline line of New York City from where we were. Then we turned around, and like you just said, then it was gone. And then you wonder what the heck happened. So that didn't put us in the mood. So I just think we went to a bar and tried to forget about it all. But the point is, it's better than being in the subway during the blackout, which certainly a lot of people were.
It sounds so sensationalistic and so extreme that for most people, it's almost laughable, associating the UFO phenomena with these memorable historic moments here in the Northeast. But that's the way it went down. Going back to your life within this period of time. Yeah.
Is that my hippie days? About 18 or so. I became that so-called hippie with the long hair, smoking the weed with friends in Central Park, watching John Lennon twirl a white rose in his face, trying to remain anonymous. But we knew it was John Lennon, right? The Dakota was right on the west side, next to the park, as you know, and Strawberry Fields right there. Wow. I now reflect on that hippie revolution of those days, thinking that now may be just another good time for the young generation to have a kind of revolution. Maybe they are in its own unique way, demanding disclosure on the UAP. It's kind of symbolic in a sense of the passion that we had back then, the revolution at the time. Maybe now is the time to have a different kind of revolution, trying to help or motivate whoever is in charge, let's say, these days, to reveal, to disclose everything. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think we should start a campaign. Let's tell the younger generation to start to wear T-shirts with the mashed potatoes shaped in the form of Devil's Tower that Richard Dreyfuss was creating in Close Encounters of the Third Kind to represent the passion, to try to get at the truth. So however you want to do it, if you want to go in on that with me, we can manufacture these T-shirts and sell it.
A memorable cinematic moment, and one that a lot of us related to who were just getting involved in the subject back then, no question about it. Continuing on again in your life.
Here we are in northern New York in the Adirondacks, where I lived for 30 plus years, working for the State University of New York, where winter lasts about 8 months. And fell in love with the beauty of nature. I got into hiking the mountains with my family, and I loved the kids, for the babies they were, and the successful, happy adults with wonderful families that they are now.
Oh, wonderful!
But the scenery of being 5,000 feet up and nothing but mountains below you. When you're up on top of Mount Marcy with your children, it's such a unique distinction from the streets of the Bronx. It just felt to me like this is right, this is real, this is true. Despite the pleasures and wonderful times growing up in the city, there's nothing like nature. So I got addicted to hiking.
I love it.
And my son and I, we backpacked throughout the mountains for years, camping, hiking, and we bonded. And I remember we were playing Risk in the tent, retiring the game Risk. And I remember talking to him about Osama bin Laden at the time, and how we need to be, watch these kinds of terrorists and crazy people. And unfortunately, things came to pass as they did. But we all learned the hard way. And then, I think the next picture is of my son and I, Scott, going up Mount Washington, the highest peak in the Northeast. When we began the hike, he struggled not to go. He began crying. He was very scared because it was such a big mountain, but I knew he could do it because he did comparable ones, even more difficult ones. But nevertheless, it was Mount Washington. So conceptually, it was scary. So I thought of my dad and how maybe this might be the good time, the opportunity to show him that you can overcome your fear and accomplish something that you might not think you could be able to do. Needless to say, we did, and that was one of the wonderful moments of my life. And he loved it.
I'm going to hold on this photo for a moment, remembering an experience of mine. In life, sometimes a literal experience can translate perfectly as a physical experience, and climbing a mountain, having the experience of persevering, of pushing forward, of having your fear, but still continuing the journey, is one of the most memorable positive experiences you can have in your life. For me, I remember on a vacation when I was probably about 14 or so, my dad and my sister and I climbing, I think it was the tallest mountain in New Hampshire. And that feeling of success, of having accomplished something important, and a photo very much like that of my sister and I taken by my dad, that brings back that feeling. Going back again, at a certain point, you were accepted to college or university. Did you immediately know what your major in the sciences was going to be, or a year of liberal arts first? And what did you then zone in on for your
Yeah. The first 2 years, I
bachelor's?
had to do the general education stuff, and then I got into the sciences, the biology, the psychology, the physics, a little bit of math, and then to graduate school, doing the same thing. Focused my studies on sensory systems in the brain, communication sciences, electrophysiology, things of that nature, which carried over to my doctorate level education, where I concentrated on just that. The neurosciences, the assessment of sensory systems, the effects of environmental toxins, drugs on human function, and it had clinical applications as well, and was publish or perish at the time in developing grants. So the slow evolving process. A few professors took me under their wings. They saw some potential there. They motivated me. They helped greatly. But it tied in with reading the almanacs of 63 and 64. Facts. Left brain, developed by hypothesis, an experimental paradigm, and to prove or disprove it. That was reality to me. It's part of it, but not complete.
This next image here, again, we're flashing back.
That's my son, Scott. What a thrill, more for me than him, to take him to the first Yankee game, right? So if you get the age, maybe around 8 or so. Yeah. So we're sitting up in the stands, having the most wonderful time, me more than him, right? A dream come true. Yeah. All of a sudden, in the middle of the game, a drunk falls on top of my son.
Oh my gosh.
From above. It didn't hurt him much, but he injured his knee. My son was very upset and complained for the rest of the game. To put it mildly, I made a little bit of a scene and got him kicked out of the stadium. But think about that. Of all the seats in the stadium, the first game of all places, he falls over my son. So after the game, because he was complaining about his knee, I thought I'd take him over to the medical unit downstairs. And I was so upset that the special occasion was marred in part by that. So while we're going to the medical office, I hear a lot of commotion, mainly younger women hooting and hollering, googly-eyed at who? Derek Jeter, and the Hall of Fame and the great shortstop for the Yankees. He was signing autographs, and there was a long line of people waiting for him to sign their ball or scorecard. Well, I was so upset over the prior incident that my son at his first game was so upset. And I thought I'd just take the chance and try to make it up to him. And I said, it's not like me, but I said, I'm getting his autograph. So I walked up to Derek Jeter, forgetting about everybody else, not caring if they got angry at me. And I explained to Derek Jeter, Derek, we drove to the stadium for 6 hours. Then a drunk falls on my son. He hurts his knee. Can you please sign our scorecard? He looks at my son. He extends his hand. My son, I could still see his mouth wide open in amazement that Derek Jeter is shaking his hand, signing his autograph. And for the 6-hour drive back, my son never mentioned his knee again. So it kind of made up for it. But then we made it an annual affair. The next year, we went to Yankee Stadium. Yankees won the first game. My son wanted to stay for the Sunday game, the next game. But because of the long ride home and time, I decided against it. Well, it was a day in May in 1998. That game that I didn't go to with my son was the game that David Wells pitched, the perfect game. Okay, so talk about regrets for sports fans. So, needless to say, every year we went to both weekend games. So that's how it goes.
Well, you zone in on a very special thing for me, how people in public life handle themselves in situations that come up very quickly. And they can either distinguish themselves by doing the right thing and an act of kindness, or yes, this was, I'm sure, miffed a number of people who were watching it and had been standing in line for a long time. But good for Mr. Jeter for doing absolutely what he should have done in that moment and turning around what would have been a negative association for life and making it into something extremely positive. I'll remember that about him in future, and I hope other people do too. Bravo. And too bad about that other game.
A true professional on and off the field. A wonderful person, yes, and I appreciate that. And getting autographs from other Yankees like Rivera, was just icing on the cake. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Next image here.
Okay, that's that's my name in Chinese, I guess. It was publisher Parrish, working in an academic setting. I had a grant that was accepted by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health that involved collaborators from the medical community at the medical center in Beijing. And they asked me to give a talk at Peking University. And they honored me in many ways. In part, it was cultural, and so they made a big to do when it really wasn't necessary. But they chaperoned my wife and I all over the place, to the Great Wall, to Tiananmen Square, the Peking duck. If you want good duck, I got a location for you if you want to go there. My wife, who had blonde hair, at least at that time, still does, but, needs a little help with that. But she kept on being hounded by people because of the blonde hair. It just stood out among the crowd. And we also went with a person I worked with who was head of the grant sponsorship program at the college. And he was about my height. I'm not very tall, but he was also about 5 times my size. How he sat in the airplane seat from where we were in America to Beijing, I don't know. But he was concerned about that. But the point is, he was stopped as we were walking in the streets of Beijing. He was stopped on numerous occasions with people pointing at him, saying, "Guess what? Buddha, Buddha." He looked like Buddha. So every time, stature-wise, every time I looked at the picture of Buddha, I think of him. He took it in stride, and he was very kind about it, and he was understanding about it. But it was a beautiful experience, and that was part of the grants and the publications. We got to see a lot of the world and the country, giving lectures based on my research. Often took my wife, so we were fortunate in that regard.
That's wonderful.
I wouldn't want to live in Beijing, though. That's for sure.
Total tangent here, but Chinese food has become so ubiquitous around the world. I don't care where you go, there's a Chinese restaurant. But for friends who have had the experience of traveling or visiting China, everything changes. All of a sudden, you realize how different. Again, often it's a banquet kind of situation, but what you are served has nothing to do with the Chinese food that we grew up with. You have any particular memories in that area? And I say that as just somebody who loves Chinese food, nothing to do with the paranormal or UFOs.
Well, when we go to Arthur Avenue, they have the Chinese food that I'm accustomed to with all the MSG in the world, right? There's nothing like it. It just tastes a little different. Maybe it's the city water that makes the pizza so special. I don't know. But yeah, it's I can't find it anywhere else. One Bowery Street. I remember that address. I don't know if it's still there. Chinese restaurant on the Bowery. Maybe you know. I'm sure you live down in that
I lived
area.
in Chinatown for 7 years. So
One Bowery. I don't know if you know that. You walk into the restaurant 2 a.m. After me and my friends had a few joints, right at 18, 19 years of age. Bright lights. Nothing but long tables, no atmosphere at all. But
the best food in the world.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, best food in the world. Exactly. Yeah.
I loved it down there.
Yeah.
Moving out of the world of Chinese food. Damn.
I started jogging. That's me on the right, as you can tell, a little competitively, but, my neurotic tendencies brought me to the point where I had to run every day, at least 3 miles, so 5K, regardless of the weather. And I'm talking about sub-zero with a northerly wind. I kid you not. I had to run. Yeah. So I put my crampons on because the ice was covering the roads, regardless of the snow or the sleet. I had to run. Needless to say, I got more than one curious look by many passerbys in their cars. But I was able to do a 5K in about 25 minutes in my 40s, 50s, a good time for that age. And I did some competitive running, but there was nothing like it until I needed a spinal fusion as a result of the heavy pounding, as it did take its toll. If I didn't have those that back issues, I'd still be running. But I walk every day quite extensively. But I miss it. There's just something about running. I don't know what it is, but I loved it. Loved it.
Well, those endorphins do produce very pleasurable feelings, and again, that feeling of satisfaction and accomplishment that comes with doing something physical and knowing that you have succeeded.
Yes, for both of those reasons, indeed. And just the act alone of moving in that way, it's like it felt normal for the body, and we're made to walk. The body is built to work. And it seems like my body and mind, endorphin related or not, it was telling me just that. Maybe I got addicted to the endorphins, as many people do. But it was wonderful. It was, despite the icy glasses at the time from running in the window, I kept on, wiping my eyes in order to see the road ahead of me from the ice that would build up, because the scarf was around my face and I had 20 pounds of warm clothes on to compensate.
I have a question for you. As somebody who has lived in New York City most of my life, but came of age in a village about 30 miles east of Manhattan, a block away from a state park, and have had plenty of opportunity to be out in wilderness areas in my life. And also somebody who thought that their life was going to be caught up, particularly in the world of culture, painting, film, theater. From a scientific point of view, growing up in New York City, in the Bronx, and nature being, a park, a lovely area in a park that suggested the wilderness, but of course surrounded by urbanity. You had an opportunity, I'm guessing, whether it was school field trips or with parents or whatever, to visit museums or do other cultural things in the city. And it's always been my thought that we're creatures who consciously or unconsciously try to balance our lives between culture and nature, often predisposed to one or the other. But for you, from a scientific point of view, any thoughts on that balance between culture and nature, and whether it's different areas of the brain that are being affected, or that some people are always going to be predisposed to one area or the other? I know people who, they didn't grow up in a city, so they don't like cities. They don't feel comfortable in museums. Some of us are lucky enough to enjoy, high culture and being out in the woods equally. I'm kind of going off on a number of tangents here, but your thoughts on this?
Yeah, love the museums, the Natural History and the Planetarium, Museum of Modern Art, of course. Nothing like it. As far as parks go, as far as culture goes, my culture was sports. If you want to call that a culture, you get a little, you lose sight, I think, of some of what nature can offer, but you benefit in other ways by what the city certainly can offer, especially the larger cities with its unique, magnificent museums and Broadway and on, of course. But the nature for me was Claremont Park, a few blocks from where I lived. Unfortunately, when my friends and I would go there, we often get into fights with other kids from areas of the South Bronx and had many confrontations. So unfortunately, despite some of the great times we had in the park, sledding and all, it was marred by gang battles. So there was always fear associated with that. Nature for us was going up to Monticello, right? An hour or two from New York City. That was upstate New York until I realized what true upstate New York is, like you in Elmira, right? That's upstate, not Monticello or, So, but taking that drive and passing the Red Apple on the highway and then you find yourself in nature, it's ineffable. In a way, you don't want to leave it, but you just miss your friends, of course, and playing stickball and everything else, but nothing like it at all. Yeah.
Sneck-Shot.
That's me giving a lecture at the UFO Congress in Arizona back in 2018. I think that, I don't know if you had, it was based on the work I did for the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation. When I was a member of that, I became a member because I saw the wealth of data that they had on people who claimed to have interacted with UFOs in varying ways. And me being an academic, I guess, I saw that data. And because I was a closet ufologist, much of my career, it turned me on. I had the opportunity now to put that kind of scientific mindset coupled with a topic of great interest. So I got involved with them, Dr. John Klimo and Dr. Rudy Shield, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, Kathleen Marden, Mary Rodwell, I was a kid in a candy store. Russ Galpone helped me, a psychologist and statistician. And, I speak what the data say. And we can talk about that as we get into a discussion of UAPs. And once I promised them that I am publishing this paper. I said it kind of in a cocky fashion because that's what I did. And it was published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, a very strict scientific-based refereed journal. And I know that because they came back with edits to our initial submission, which conclusively convinced me that the people who were analyzing that article knew science. It's not easy to get an article published in there, but I could talk to them. I knew where they were coming from, and it was published, often unrecognized within ufology, and that's fine. But and I'm not saying that's the answer. All the data in that article is the answer because it does need to be replicated. Kathleen Marden also did a similar study, by the way, and confirmed our results when she led the experiencer research team for MUFON at the time. So we did get some replication and validation of the results, which was good to see. But it's a baseline, it's a foundation for other researchers to build upon, to get a better understanding of what the experience for the person who does interact with the phenomenon is more about from a subjective perspective.
And we will be getting into all of that in the second half of the show. Very quickly, we have one more image here. And who is this gentleman you're with?
Well, look at the license plate if you can. I don't know if you could. Can you make that? Can you enlarge that at all? It says Tic Tac.
No, Tic Tac 1.
That's a great Dave Beatty, director, producer of the Nimitz Encounter, which really broke the lid open on that whole affair. Beautiful person. We were just talking, and we're working on that documentary together. We're there together at a CE5. We filmed a little bit of a CE5 up in the Tampa area. Mike Merberg, CE5 at Darby Ranch. Beautiful people. Wonderful, wonderful. And it's an honor and privilege to know Dave and to work with him. I'm learning a great deal about the film business. What do I know about it? And at the same time, he's learning a little bit more about consciousness and everything related with that. Not that we have the answers by no means, but he's a journalist. And so he's very bright, and he studies the area extensively to get as good a clear picture of what it's all about, to know how to address it. And that's what led to that classic Nimitz Encounter documentary that I believe has about 6 million hits already on YouTube.
And that actually is the perfect place for us to leave off on this first hour. This is Peter Robbins with my guest, Dr. Robert Davis, and we will be back in 3 minutes.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
And we are back here on Earth, meanwhile, with your host, Peter Robbins, and my special guest today, Dr. Robert Davis. Bob, let's begin the second hour with the fact that you are author of 3 books on 3 decidedly different, I would say outsider subjects in a way. My first question for you is, how did you become interested in the subject of UFOs? What was it? Was it an event, an individual? What brought you to an interest in this particular subject for starters?
I'm not sure. I asked myself the same question. I guess it's just the upbringing with the science fiction films and shows at the time, and the space race, and that the suspected UFO incident during the blackout that turned me on. But I had that. I just always felt there was a lot more to reality than what it is, and maybe a little bias involved, thinking that I want it to be true, if you know what I'm saying. But after you start getting involved in reading the material that existed at that time, it was compelling, and it was hard to ignore. But I never had an upfront, direct personal experience until much later in life, but nevertheless carried that passion in a way that became much stronger. As we went down that rabbit hole, so to speak. So,
you have written about a subject that, for some people, is as real as the chairs that we're sitting in right now. For other people, seems absolutely science fiction, but if it's happened to you, there's no questioning it. For a lot of us, this subject is regularly something that comes up. If you are alive, and you know that at a certain point you will not be alive, whether it's from an analytical or scientific perspective, or if you're a person of faith, that question is one that accompanies most of us throughout our lives. Did you write this book, or was the inspiration or impetus for writing this book because you yourself had a near-death experience?
I had not a near-death experience, but I had a shared death experience. After my first book, the UFO Phenomenon, Should I Believe, which I wrote as a intro 101, as an objective academic, not giving my perspective, so it doesn't really reflect my opinions on the matter, but let the reader decide, present different opposing points of view for the newbie. But I had a lucid dream one morning, I forget the year, 2012, 13, and I felt intense suffocation. I couldn't breathe. I felt that I knew that my colleague, dear friend who I worked with in the lab, had died. I knew it. I didn't see her in the lucid dream. I just felt the horrific sense of dying. But I knew it, a knowingness. You know what I'm going to say next. Later that morning, I found out that she died. Just at about the same time that I had that experience. Coincidence? I never had a lucid dream like that before. I don't even remember having a lucid dream, as we call realer than real. And that led me to writing that book. And that conflicted with my left brain, as this whole phenomenon still does. Trying to make sense out of things that don't make sense as far as mainstream science is concerned. So I got into the near-death experience, the out-of-body experience, physical mediumship, all the current research in ESP, quantum physics, anything and everything that gets at that. equation. Is there life after death? We don't have any, hard evidence, but I went into it with a 50-50 chance. After doing my research, I do believe there is something beyond the physical body that we do experience. But that's largely based on anecdotal information. I learned more from talking to people than from the scientists. Yeah, but you need the science, and again, integrate the scientific theories, largely in quantum physics, which gets at a bit of the Newtonian sciences to a large extent, that made sense with the subjective experience of near-death and out-of-body experiences, ESP, etc., to explain that space-time thing that we theorize about. I would say I strongly believe, I wish I knew it like the back of my hand, those that have a near-death experience, which this wasn't, close to it in a way. Speaking with Eben Alexander and Jeff Long of the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, it's rare an occurrence, these shared death experiences, but they do happen. But you have to get into not only the literature, you have to talk to people who have it. People who are more sane than I, and maybe that's not saying too much, kiddingly, but the point is they're very well balanced individuals, and the story as your listeners know, they know like the back of their hand that they're going home, and somebody told me that if they were told that they were going to die today, they would look forward to it because they are going home, back to that unconditional love and all of that goes with it that we hear about. That's remarkable. And of course, science can't explain it. My left brain, can't wrap around it. You have a hypothesis, you want to prove it. How? What am I supposed to do with it? It's like I was talking to somebody yesterday. He told me when I was 13 years old, a man had walked through the wall into my room. I heard this from Reverend Michael J. Carter, who I have great respect for. A very well-balanced, beautiful person. A great touched me, Bob. A great touched me. And you know what? It did. A great I believe him. I don't need a scientific data statistically analyzed, published in a referee journal to be convinced that, I need to have it to be firmly convinced as much as he is and others who are experiences. And I believe like you, as you've mentioned on prior shows. I don't know if I want that experience, but I'm pretty close to believing that, there's something beyond this.
One of the things I admire about you and your work is you are a true scientist, and your approach to exploring subjects that fly in the face of established, classic scientific data it's a struggle to maintain the kind of objectivity that is best suited to exploring these subjects. One of the wild cards has to do, and you brought it up at the beginning, with this phenomena we call coincidence, or in the Jungian term, synchronicity. And for myself, I'm like you in that I try to approach things as a layperson with as much objectivity as I can muster in the face sometimes of extraordinary accounts. At the same time, I've had a handful of experiences in my life involving synchronicity or coincidence that have been shattering, absolutely so overwhelming that I remember in the most extreme of them literally struggling to hold on to not my sanity as much as my equilibrium, with almost a mantra of every once in a while somebody wins $100 million lottery, every once in a while somebody wins $100 million lottery, that extraordinarily unlikely things can happen simply because that's the way it is. And at the same time, when it's paired up with an event that may have particular resonance for you in a subjective sense, sometimes we simply, it changes the way that we think. It changes our outlook, or affects it to such a degree that we are then open to possibilities we were not previously open to.
That's very true. It's struggled. Yeah, it's putting it mildly. I can't imagine what it's like to be a full-blown experiencer. I have in my own unique ways, and that was a struggle alone, trying to make sense of.
Agreed.
But the cork comes out of the bottle. And you have a million questions. Why me? What happened? Who do I tell? Besides trying to deal with the anxiety and all, that's like people that interact with UFOs. It's not always a pleasant thing. It makes you question yourself and reality, and that's why maybe the conflicts in relationships seem to increase in those who are experiences, because it does change them. You get into that peak experience kind of thing. It's a transpersonal event that is life-altering, of course. Initially, maybe with repeated experiences, people adapt to it and become more positive or accepting with it. Others don't. And the problem is, experiences need to be validated and supported. And I thank you and people like you who are experiencers who do present it to the public. I was hesitant to say I saw 2 orange orbs in the night sky in Sedona, Arizona, which led me to write my first book, The UFO Phenomenon. I was hesitant. I mentioned it to one person who I work with, and I did so very reluctantly, and it's unfortunate. Now, of course, with the small d disclosure and the Gillibrand Amendment, the people are waking up a little bit more to the fact that this is real, but those debunkers and skeptics will still write it off, probably to drones from China or Russia, until maybe something more significantly revealing exists in the form of, guess what? Non-human entities, intelligences coexist with us or are visiting us in one or more ways. Yeah, it's beyond a struggle. It's a life-altering experience for many, and that people need to know who to turn to, who understand them, and not be dumbed down and called schizophrenic and treated with medication they don't need, as often happens, unfortunately. And medical community psychologists are maybe just coming around now, accepting that. It's cultural. The people that have these kind of interactions, which we call maybe paranormal. You have it here in the United States or in the West, and you're regarded as being different in the wrong way. But if you have it in Eastern societies, you're looked up to as a shaman or a goddess. So it's a kind of psychocultural thing, the East meeting West. We got to integrate both perspectives. It is real. What you experience certainly is real. UAPs are real. There's no doubt about it. We still scratch our heads, of course, as to what it is, their objective. But I'm at the point now where, if you debunk me for believing that, for whatever reason, I appreciate you telling me, because now I know to avoid you. I don't need people who debunk. You could oppose me in a collegial manner, of course, with rationale. It's accepting, obviously. But it is real. You can't even get into the evidence. We talk about the evidence all the time, over and over and over again. How many different stories can you hear? We're beyond that, whether it's real or not. It is real. There are many other existing questions that go beyond the validity of the phenomena. And it's not only UAPs. There's numerous other phenomena associated with it and not with it.
I would say, according to the stricter definitions that I become familiar with, I'm really not an experiencer per se, unless one wants to say the childhood UFO sighting that I shared with my sister, which was overpowering for me and life-changing ultimately when that memory returned years later. I guess one could classify that as my being an experiencer. But when we're talking about, like you were just talking about, Dr. Carter, who will be an upcoming guest on this show, I'm glad to report, having a gray touch him and that memory. my experiences have been very modest compared to those of people that I would consider experiencers with a capital E. And in talking about the ironic tragedy, in a way, of people being treated with, psychotropic, antipsychotic medications because they have had experiences that fly so decidedly in the face of the establishment medical personnel or mental health personnel they're interfacing with, that they have to be subjected to these horrific, inappropriate treatments because the professional has no other rationale, and it's too threatening to them that this might be real. You remind me, though, one very memorable case that I worked on with Bud Hopkins over the years, where the experiencer, whose case ultimately proved to be one of the most remarkable in the 100 that I've been privy to over the years, when evidence was finally presented to her that she had had the actual experiences that she had hoped were dreams or delusions or the machinations of being mentally ill, she broke down. What she had wanted more than anything was to find out, what mental disease she had and what medication she could take to address it. She was even then still unprepared for the reality of the things that had happened to her, which ultimately in time they were reinforced to such a degree that she knew from experiences that she had very conscious memories of that were all too real. And we're still in the infancy, in a way, of these studies. I think that there will be a time in the future, I don't think we'll live to see it, but if we don't blow ourselves to hell, or we don't assist this planet in becoming so inhospitable that only the cockroaches are left alive, that humanity may look back on this period of time in the late 20th, the early 21st century, when there was this cadre of individuals who were fighting for recognition for these things that ultimately we learned about ourselves, about our environment, and the other intelligences that were interacting with some of us, that were paradigm shifting, that became kind of another BC AD moment in humanity's evolution. Going on to your first book here, and I love the idea that, and this is your first book? No. I've got the book on UFOs. I don't have a cover for. Tell us about that book. And again, you started to talk about it, but approaching these subjects as scientifically as possible, without an agenda. You had nothing to prove here or nothing to disprove. You were a scientist giving it the clearest look that you could. Was there a moment that made you decide that I'm going to have to write a book about this, as opposed to just thinking about it or talking to people that had had experiences or sightings?
Yeah, I can't recall if I mentioned earlier, my wife and I, we often visit Sedona, Arizona, which is a magnificent area.
It is.
Of course, it's beautiful. And it's known for many paranormal-like events. And I thought I'd take advantage of the opportunity and look around at night. So we were walking in the area of a ranch, and I forget the name of the ranch that's out there. That's been written about quite a bit, known for its vortices. And I'm looking up at the night sky, and I see an orange orb, big bright orange orb, several miles away.
To cut you off for one moment, is this ranch deserted?
Yeah.
Okay, I did a major photo essay on it some years ago during the day. And it was a haunting enough place to be during the day. And the name of the family is the name of the ranch that owned the property. Yeah. Okay.
I think the government may have.
I think so. I think it was ceded to them for some reason.
Yeah.
Or another.
Yeah.
But it's like a frozen little ghost town
Yes,
Yeah.
right about 10 miles or so outside the main area of the city. Yeah. So I'm looking at it, trying to analytically interpret it, obviously geothermal, atmospheric, et cetera. And as I'm looking at it, it's almost it then started to maybe communicate with me by splitting apart, or another orange orb, in other words, either came from behind it or within it. So there's now two sitting side by side, almost to say, put your left brain away. This is
the Bradshaw Ranch.
That's it. Yes, That's exactly it. I think I got my answer. Not that it was a UAP; it was unidentified. What it is, maybe plasma based, which could be a basis for many of the orbs that we see. Not all UAPs are associated with plasma. This might have been, but I had to write a book after that. It challenged me. And that's why I wrote that again, that intro to 101. People who may read that book, I would change it completely. I'm going to write another book down the road on the UFO phenomena. It's going to be completely different. Don't align my perspectives with what I wrote in the book. Again, as I said earlier, that was an intro to 101 kind of text for the person who's just getting into the field. At that time, there was more of a controversial aspect to this phenomenon, which I think is dissipating to some extent and destigmatizing society, because millions of people throughout time, all over the world, as we all know, are having these kinds of experiences and then some. Well, that got the cork out of my bottle. It took a while for me to figure out what's going on. I had to put it in writing. That's what I did. I research and I write my whole life. So this was such an eye-opening event. It wasn't a gray walking through a wall touching me, but it was still something highly unusual, consistent with the orange orbs that we see all the time in pictures, nothing different. And I had to get it out of me, in a sense, in that way. And that was cathartic. Not mentioning my experience to anyone other than maybe one or two people for, again, fear of being labeled negatively. Because the last thing people want to hear is that there's something wrong with you after you talk to a physician, a psychologist about it. You don't want to admit it for obvious reasons, and not entirely their fault. They never read about it in their textbooks as they were learning their discipline either. So I just went over all the traditional cases from Roswell to Phoenix Lights and then some. Got into the abduction experience and added other perspectives in there, trying to be as objective as possible. But should I believe? Of course. People should have free will and believe what they want to believe, certainly. But at least for those who talk about the subject with a strong opinion, please first do your research, read numerous books. There's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of wonderful books out there as well. And that's sometimes hard to figure out which ones to read or not read, like Leslie Kean's book is one, as well as many others, of course. Do your research, then let's debate in a professional, collegial, friendly manner about it. But the people who say, I don't believe in this, have you ever read anything about it? No. I did see Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Did you research it? No. And I'm talking about scientists. Well, you're a scientist. You know how to research. Formulate opinion on the biggest question, as far as I'm concerned, of today. This is the biggest issue. Unless I'm wrong, I think if we could understand the phenomenon, the intelligence behind it, I think we have a key that unlocks the door to possibly what life, reality, consciousness, and everything in between is all about. Millions of people are seeing this, experiencing in all various ways, as we know. And it's depicted in cave walls from people wearing bear skins, etching their experiences, the visual and otherwise, on stone walls and in the Bible, folklore. You know the story till today. So now we're throwing 2022 at it with all the tech. We have to. But we also need to listen to the experiences. We have to study the kinematic, physical components of it. We must. The historical aspect of it, we must. And I respect everybody in the field greatly for their efforts to try to understand it in their own unique way. But we need a multidisciplinary approach. And I talk much about that in the book, to better understand this complex phenomena. We need the social, cultural anthropologists, the psychologists, et cetera, not only the pilots and the physicists and the mathematicians. We need the social scientists. We need the experiencers. We need more studies like the Dr. Edgar Mitchell did, like MUFON did, and a few others, like John Mack. Come on, John, look what John Mack went through, the poor guy. And he was right on. He was right on. And thank you for the work you did with Bud Hopkins. He did a wonderful service for so many people that are blessed by meeting him and getting a better understanding of what happened, and convince them more so that it's real and it's not a mental disease. Of course, there are some that do have a mental, delusional disorder, but that's in a very small minority of the cases. It's a real phenomenon. I don't think that's a debate anymore.
Everything that you're saying is bringing me to a series of questions, Bob, that we could spend probably a semester discussing just the questions at hand. But to begin with, and it's almost unfair at the same time for you in a reasonable amount of time to try to sum up what is what we term consciousness.
Yeah, we do need a semester on that, don't we? I don't have the answer. Nobody does. We ask the same questions that Plato, Socrates asked. We just know there's something more than the physical body. To me, and it depends on who you talk to. I once asked an anesthesiologist I was going to put me under for a little surgery. And I said, "And what is consciousness?" He says, "You'll soon find out if I give you this propofol through the IV." To the medical community, that's consciousness, the degree of wakefulness. To the psychologists, it's a cognitive aspect of self-will, free will, being aware, that kind of thing. Theologian will give you it's a discipline specific. So we don't even know, we don't have criteria to define what consciousness is, really. And that's the problem, and far greater minds as I made throughout time have debated it. Again, we still don't know what it is. I think it's bits of information. And
I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah, we go to that what's it called, panpsychism, and kind of an extension of that integrated information theory. Everything has a degree of consciousness if you define consciousness as information. Bang your head on a rock. Well, what is the rock telling you? Don't do it again. You're going to hurt yourself. So in a sense, you're getting information from rocks, water, let alone life forms, of course. But many scientists are now moving in that direction. Information exchange, retrieving or sending information, and maybe that is consciousness. They're even putting a unit to it to measure it quantitatively. We as humans may score 100, whereas a rock would score a 1, but it's still conscious. A low level, it's going to give you some information. Don't do that again. I'm going to hurt my hand. Everything gives us information, pleasing or otherwise, and maybe that's what it is.
In your recent book titled Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality, and You use a term, peak experience. What do you mean specifically by peak experience?
Call it a mystical event, a transpersonal event, an event that makes your morning coffee the next day very different. Life has changed in many ways from that moment forward. It's an ineffable experience. People describe it in different ways, and it's facilitated in many different ways. But a peak experience is, people get a greater sense of reality, an interconnectedness with the universe. People feel that they have an expanded awareness, call it consciousness, if you will, a better sense of what life's all about. The people who seem to become more aware, or at least question their existing 3D reality through a peak experience, which could be facilitated by a near-death experience, even a UAP encounter that's dramatic, out-of-body experiences, among many other things that knock our socks off in varying ways. That does change our philosophical and personal values from that moment forward. And in doing the research for my books, it's remarkable how people's viewpoints are dramatically changed. And overall, collectively, many exceptions, people do seem to feel more humane in the sense that they're more sympathetic and empathetic, like less egotistical. Boy, if you could come up with a pill to dissolve the ego, tell me the name of that company before it goes public the next day, right? That's the enemy of society. Let's dissolve that ego. But what I can see as a peak experience is a form of ego dissolution, where you're not the center of the universe anymore. You more or less revolve. You're more concerned about the well-being of the planet, less interested in material matters, money, or organized religion, although people become more spiritual, more care, all of that. All the things we seem to want to be in life. People who have a peak experience, and you talk to more people than I, although talking to people who have these peak experiences, they say they benefit from them. Initially, it's one heck of a shock beyond belief. Not always, but it certainly can be. Yeah. But it's such an eye-opening experience that it can't be ignored. But it's a transpersonal, life-changing event.
Coming from that question, there are many things, of course, that science cannot explain, does not explain, may never be able to explain, or may be able to explain at some point in the future. For me, one of the things is, again, whether you're coming at these subjects from a objective, dispassionate, science-based Darwinian point of view, or from a point of view of God, faith, and mystical tradition, how does science explain extrasensory perception, which of course covers a number of areas of behavior and activity, all of which, if it happens to you, is part of the way the world is. But if they're not part of your experience, or you have an experience that would be covered by that term ESP, but it freaks you out and you reject it and deny its reality because it's too threatening to everything you thought you knew. Does science have a way of explaining what we generally refer to as ESP, extrasensory perception?
Not traditional science. ESP is real. Psychokinesis is real. I know it is. But you see, people who say ESP isn't real, if you have ESP, the James Randi, I'll give you $1 million if you can tell me what the serial number of the dollar bill is in my pocket. Right. ESP doesn't work that way. ESP works on how they talk to Dean Radin, the leading researcher for ions, and he's going to be in our documentary, as well as many other experts in this area. But ESP predict, for instance, flip a coin 1,000 times, predict each time whether it's going to be a head or a tail. So over 1,000 trials, it'll be 50-50. The person, however, who can get maybe 60% or 70% correct, okay, not 100%, not reading the serial number of the dollar bill, but the person gets 60 or 70% correct, not 50%, the odds of that is like hundreds a million to one against odds, the odds of 100 million to one, that did not occur by chance. You see, it's a statistical issue that people
let me
don't
share
understand.
the cover to the book while we talk. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. People, ESP is a very subtle thing. You look at there's been over hundreds of studies involving over 7,000 people, conclusively proving, and you got to go into the literature to realize this. And I did in writing my books. And you do realize, if you have to understand statistics, however, that the odds against people doing the things they can do, like modifying physical systems in varying ways, changing the pH of water with using mental intention, healings, they come in all different ways. It's statistical in the sense that the chances are impossible that can be done at that probability, at that level of significance. You see, so unless it doesn't work like ESP doesn't work like I can read your mind, although many people can, or communicate with the deceased. Eben Alexander, he's talked about this. He's going to be in our documentary. Neurosurgeon, had a near-death experience. He talked about it in his lectures. He gave up practice to discuss his experiences and what true reality is, at least according to him. And I concur. He meets a woman who says, I'm your sister. I died before you were born, and gives him information about the family. He somehow miraculously recovers, which, given no chance to do so, he relays that information to his parents, who firmly conclude that he could not have known that. He was never told that unless he spoke to his deceased sister. Is that an aspect of ESP? It's information that could not have otherwise been obtained. That's at least accepting by the scientific community. They recognize the near-death experience, but when people do have these kinds of events and incidents, like physical mediums, for instance, at the Windbridge Institute, under quadruple, well-controlled experiments, 80-90% accuracy in terms of obtaining information about a person shielded in a remote location without them sharing any information at all. It's anonymous. Julie Bichel does those experiments, and they're right. They get these. I'm not saying all of them. Don't spend money and go to a psychic reader, please, on the corner. No,
or remote viewing, so to say.
Remote viewing is real, right? And Ingo Swann, they threw him at the UAP, and it's real, exactly. Space and time, you can bypass that. We can get into the discussion of laws of quantum mechanics and how that may be achievable. Theoretical, we don't need to go there, but it gets at it much better in terms of explaining how time and space can be, let's say, mitigated, masked, excluded from the equation, so that information is derived in ways that don't require reading a book or watching a movie. There's this non-local, as we call it, kind of communication. I've spoken to Dean Radin on a few occasions. I have great respect for him, among other people who've done research, and I'm more than convinced that it is real, but it's subtle, and people don't understand that. It's no question it's real. Even people who he did an experiment, Dean Radin. If you make a chocolate cake with love and affection, it tastes much better to the person who eats it than if you prepare that same food with a lot of anger and hate and all of that. Yeah, again, I respect his well-controlled experiments, which demonstrate things like that. Intention, you see, there's something there that's more than or beyond the physical, and maybe we can apply that in medical healing. And look, I know Bill Bankston, who the president of Society for Scientific Exploration. He showed me pictures of a mouse with cancerous tumors, and he does his magic with his hands, and he shows me pictures with them without big tumors that shortly thereafter, and they never get cancer again. How do you do it, Bill? I don't know, Bob. It's a resonant bond of some type. We hear about these medical healings through intention. How do we facilitate that? How do we develop it so that maybe we all can do this? And maybe that's why we need a paradigm shift to focus our efforts more on ESP. This hidden potential that we all have in varying ways and cultivate it from early on in life, is instead of trying to remember who discovered the Mississippi River or something like that, this is the paradigm shift that we need, trying to understand what we call the paranormal, which eventually will be, as you know, will be considered more normal. But that requires that shift, like the Darwinism and the Copernican paradigm shifts that preceded us. Quantum physics is now kind of a paradigm shift in a way, but we even have to go beyond that. Newtonian physics gets at it. We need it. It's necessary, but it's not designed really to give us answers about this.
What was, all said and done, what was your motivation for making a documentary on consciousness, and how did you connect with your partner in this project, Dave Beatty, who we saw in the last frame in the first hour of the show?
When I was writing my book, Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science and Reality in You, I knew it would become a documentary. I don't know why, I just thought it would make sense to me. I'm trying to integrate the pieces like the chess player I am, trying to figure out the next move, what makes sense, what the other person is thinking. And I just thought there's truth here. As difficult a struggle it was to analytically understand it, by talking to people more than the experiments alone, but combined the physical and the subjective data, convinced me that reality is far more complex than we can ever imagine. And I want to help make humanity more aware of that. Whether or not they believe it, that's up to them. But I think they need to know about these kinds of experiments we're talking about, the kinds of experiences that people have. There's more than just CNN and Fox News. That's critical, of course, but reality, life, the experiences that people report are beyond comprehension. And I thought a documentary would help serve in that way, more so than people reading my book, and not many people are going to probably do that. The only way to do it is to wake people up through film. And then I decided to send out an invitation to film companies. What the heck? Let me see where this goes. I'd like to do a documentary. Maybe I could turn somebody on about that and get them to go along with it. The first production company I sent my inquiry to was Dreamtime Entertainment. Person responded, okay, let's have lunch and talk about this. Okay, all right. I met him at a restaurant here, and we're talking about the book in general, the concepts involved. And he says to me, you ever see the Nimitz Encounter documentary? I said, sure, I loved it. Fantastic. And then he says, well, I'm Dave Beatty. Yeah, I didn't know who Dave Beatty was. And he didn't know my name, nor should he. I mean, I've been on some shows and such, but, I'm not a celebrity. But I didn't know Dave Beatty, as most people do who are in the field, especially. Yeah, I'm Bob Davis. How you doing? Well, I'm the one who did the film. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm the one who wrote the book, Unseen Forces, because a few days before I gave him the book, he sends me a quote that included the term unseen forces. Oh. And then shortly after that, after we got rolling, he calls his friend Gary Voorhees, who works for UAPX. I commend all those organizations that are looking at the physical aspects of the phenomenon. My hats are off to all of them for their efforts. And so Dave asked Gary, you ever hear this guy Bob Davis who wrote the book Unseen Forces? And Gary told me, yeah. I said to Dave, Bob Davis. I'm reading the dude's book right now. Okay, he was reading my book at the same time. Then, a few weeks after that, I'm looking up at the night sky on my lanai, and I just felt like taking out my phone and looking at the stars. And I said, I want to get to know the constellations better, the names of the stars. So I just, for some reason, focused on 3 stars. So I look at the name Deneb. I'm looking in the northwest, Deneb. Then I move to the left, Altair was the next star. Then I move to the right, Vega, D. So I said to myself, how am I going to remember that? Well, acronyms work well, right? That helps our memory recall. D, Deneb, A, Altair, V, D-A-V. You get the picture? Dave, Davis. Well, and I never did that before. Timing and meaning. I think a gentleman by the name of Carl Jung coined the term, right? Synchronicity. What's the odds? Who knows? I could win a lottery too, right? It just, these things come about. And then it's just like our future was literally and figuratively written in the stars, if you know what I mean. Literally, it was presented in the stars, as the saying goes. And the rest is history. We're just out of the box. We're 6 months in, trying to get sponsorship for it, and that's where we're at. So, wake people up about not only consciousness, of course, but the phenomena involved that do seem to involve the subjective experience, aspects of reality, call it whatever you wish, but revealing the complexity of it all, and that there's more than just this 3D world we live in, that people, by and large, maybe don't care about it, don't acknowledge, but many more people are coming around too. And millions, I think, are becoming more aware through many of the shows, especially those like you, my favorite. You are with your show. You're amazing, but you're waking people up in your own way. You see, maybe your experiences of the past woke you up to help others and help make humanity more aware of the complexity in life. That was your purpose. Maybe it was my purpose too. And I go like this to my wife, maybe somebody's, manipulating us, a control system that Jacques Vallée would often say. And I have great respect for Jacques, one of my, favorites in the field. So, and Hynek, who also felt the same thing. It's a physical phenomena and a spiritual one, or a psychic one.
Let me jump in for a moment. The documentary, which is called The Consciousness Connection, is a work in progress right now. It's far from complete. And before talking about how you and Dave are working to fund the film, let's take a look at the trailer that you guys have prepared, if we might.
Thank you.
What is consciousness? A quantum field? A structure in the brain? A multidimensional projection? The very essence of awareness that gives rise to life.
It's a mystery because we don't know what we're trying to explain.
There's people that fall into consciousness and material.
Consciousness has so many different meanings.
Consciousness is a hybrid. It's technology.
How does it connect us with our world, our universe, and life beyond?
Because consciousness interacts with our physical environment, reality. That is the missing link.
What if consciousness is a force to Earth just like gravity?
Is there a link between consciousness extrasensory perception, and other anomalous events?
It could be a near-death experience with the beautiful white light, the interaction with many different types of entities. People have out-of-body experiences from meditation to psychoactive drugs.
And I think this is really important when you look at extraterrestrial experiencers or people that have had these peak experiences.
My daughter and I walked out of a movie theater at night. My daughter pointed up in the sky and she said, "What's that?" And it was just sitting there. It was a boomerang-shaped craft the size of a football field, a large orb telescoped open. It moved around like it was searching for something. Once you experience it, you can't go back. You know that reality is unbelievably bizarre.
And the dimensionality of consciousness is going to move us into advancing who we are as humans.
But we await the paradigm shift, which is critical in terms of our understanding the science of the subjective, integrating it with the science of the physical in order to better understand consciousness, reality, and maybe a little bit more about what life and reality is all about.
Will we break through the stigma of this science of the extraordinary and challenge the true nature of reality in the Consciousness Connection?
Wow.
Dave Beatty did a great job with that, didn't he? And that's why I have full confidence in his professionalism and working with him, knowing that the documentary is going to be of great quality, and we have 15 plus leading experts in the field and experiencers, where we integrate both as best as we possibly can in an objective way. Maybe for PBS, Nova, we're looking at that, so in Netflix. And obviously we need, like all filmmakers, and I find myself in that awkward position saying, we need sponsorship from people who resonate with it, from especially experiencers who also want to help wake up humanity and to be validated for their own experiences. And this is one way to do it. Organizations, too, that might be interested, of course. We would love to work with anyone who is interested with us. Sure.
Is there any way that we, myself, people who are watching or listening to this show, can help you complete this? Is there a GoFundMe site, or how are you raising the rest of the money that you need to complete this project?
Well, right now it's purely GoFundMe on the website, consciousnessfilm.info. Right above the trailer is the GoFundMe link. And so people can contribute in that way. For me, it's not about making money. It really isn't. Believe me, it isn't. Of course, if I make some, it's for the kids. Obviously, it's the passion for obvious reasons, and to help wake up humanity, to help shift that needle in the right direction, as we all do, as you're doing beautifully. And that's why I have, again, Peter, such great respect for the work you do. We need more Peter Robbins, but you see, there's millions out there, millions, and they're still hiding, wondering, questioning, and they need to make not only medicine, psychology more aware of this, and to treat them with respect and dignity, and that they do not have a mental illness. We're here to help them to a large extent in the process. And if you resonate with that concept, support us, but only if you resonate with this concept. I'm not begging. I hate to sound like a producer, but that's the kind of position you're in. You need money to help shift that needle in this way. I feel very awkward doing this, really.
You're doing a great job. All I can say is this is a film that we all want to see finished. And believe it or not, you and I are out of time. hard as it is to believe. This is Peter Robbins on Meanwhile Here on Earth. My special guest tonight has been Dr. Robert Davis. Bob, thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. And my guest next week will be Raymond Semensky, author of the book Swamp Gas My Ass, The True Exploits of Two Air Force Pilots Who Intercepted the Michigan Swamp Gas UFO, North Korean MiGs, and Russian Nuclear Bombers. If you've enjoyed the show, please tell your friends. Same time next week. Stay safe, stand up for what you believe in, and be kind to each other.
Thank you.